Angela Merket is currently Executive Director of CLN Kids, formerly Cuidando los Niños. This agency's mission is ending child homelessness, and they work with families in a two-generation model. Children under the age of 6 attend a 5-star rated early childhood program, and parents become housed, expand their educations, and obtain jobs. Angela was one of the founding members of We Are People here in Santa Fe, and we are so lucky to have her talents in banking on central New Mexico. Angela is passionate about justice making, social, economic, and civil.
Thank you. As you have heard, and as we're addressing, what are the needs that could possibly be addressed or that are existing in our larger community that public banking could help address, and we could again have the focus on our local resources, our local revenues are turned around into reinvestment in our community and in our people. I too have hope, as Sharon was indicating. I think that it can become really self-defeating for us to think about being at the bottom, and I hear that all the time because I'm working at the intersection of homelessness, poverty, domestic violence, early childhood education, and those numbers keep coming up for New Mexico and for the greater Albuquerque area on the bottom of this and on the bottom of that. But I still get up every morning and say, what are we going to do today to make a difference for the families? Because it is about access to support and services. It is about addressing an investment in our families, in our community, to break those cycles of poverty and to be able to say there is possibility. You're 25, you're 28 years old, you have 2, 3 children, you're a single mom, and there's a life ahead of you, and here are some doors and some options for how you can move through that with the investment of the larger community. You can create a self-sustaining family, and the whole community is enhanced in its well-being. We're all enhanced as a result of that kind of investment. So what does that mean in terms of what those resources could be? Well, a number of factors relate to that, and Diane mentioned those too. We have infrastructure issues that also challenge some of our families, transportation, access to public transportation that will both help the children get to school and get to school on time, as well as the families, the parents, be able to access jobs that will be self-sustaining and that they can get back into whatever neighborhood they're living in safe, affordable housing. And notice I put safe and affordable together. We're doing a whole lot better, I have to say. It's just that I think we could do even more. It's also about what are the other services that make a difference to the families through which we might be able to reinvest stronger. We touched earlier, I think perhaps the senator mentioned early childhood education and our permanent fund. Whether it's local or at a state level, the investment in our young children is a major factor, and it's going to be how we break through the cycles of poverty and help make a difference for these children as they grow up, as they become more engaged in the economic well-being of their community, in this case, the greater Albuquerque community, and become participants in the larger economy and break those cycles of poverty again. We have numbers that say nationally that of the homeless population, families make up about 14% of that population. In the greater Albuquerque area, our numbers indicate that anywhere between 20 and 22% of the homeless population is made up of families, not individual men, individual women, or couples without children. So, you know, there's high potential there for how we invest, how we look at public banking and investment of our resources in the local community, in determining where and how shall we focus in making that wedge or those wedges that make a difference in our overall well-being throughout the community. We can do it. I firmly believe that we have the resources, and as Sharon and Diane have both said, we have great ideas, we have resourceful people, we have resources that may be limited or stalled at times. At the same time, when we decide that we want to make a change in a direction, and we're working collectively to make that happen, we can do that. And it's not a question of what political party am I a part of. It goes beyond, and I'm inspired more recently by some of the writings of Pope Francis on his tying together environmental change, climate change, and inequality. And I think there are implications here too about how can we be wise and get above the fracas of we're looking at where we're different and think about where can we enhance the well-being of more of us and really be thinking in terms of the well-being and the common good in our larger community. And when we can step beyond what's different, how are we looking at differences in contrast to what do we share, how can we help to ensure that more people are treated with human dignity, that we value each and every person who is a part of our community. When we can challenge each other to more fully live that out, then I think we can make a difference, an even larger difference, because we're making a difference now. And I really see and firmly believe in the public banking initiative as being one approach that gives us access to resources to be able to make that happen. Behind that, though, I'm still inspired by Craig Barnes' words of several years ago when we were first creating We Are People here, that, you know, we can engage more people, we can assist more people in really living out more fully the principles of our democracy and what we espouse as who we are as citizens of this country. And public banking is definitely one means of getting there, I think. So that's what I would hold out for us.
Bill Light from Santa Fe, We Are People Here. I'm not clear on how making the connection between public banking and the kinds of improvements that you all have talked about. How does that relate in practical terms?
We all want to answer that. And I'm counting on these two ladies to correct me, because I'm just, when you have a public bank where you have dollars, that have just saved the municipality or state or whomever is doing it, millions of dollars because we're not paying somebody else's financing, you have that money available to invest in your community in many different ways. And even though at the outside there may be grants available, there's one of the big buzz things going around in philanthropy right now is socially responsible investing. When you have public dollars that can actually be invested right back into your community. When I use the CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution example, those are loans that are made out to businesses and the public and even some consumers. And just you know, hypothetically, so I may then have million of public money that can be then channeled through the community development financial institution or credit union or whatnot with parameters, right? And I may be getting the public money back at 1% and the CDFI is charging 4%, and then the money grows and grows and grows, and it's further and further and further deeper into our community. And I think the same with my example of the being a guarantor on a credit card. So if I have a relationship with my public funds with one of our credit unions, and I'm able to say, if you will take this risky financial product and get it into the low-income families, I will guarantee it. It's going to fuel our economy, it's going to fuel the families, and it'll generate itself. Could you guys add to that?
Yeah, Diane, why don't you?
I thought that was very well stated,
Thank
really. I would like to add one thing, and that is to talk a little bit more about risk and policy. In creating our own bank, all of us, everybody in Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, however define that, can have a say and should be able to come up with an idea, a concept of what kind of risk we'd be willing to take on. Since we wouldn't have shareholders to satisfy, we wouldn't have to pay dividends, that risk can be greater, a little bit greater. And when I was talking about small businesses and the difference that maybe $500,000 would make, even if some of those loans default, it would not present an insurmountable challenge to the bank. The bank would be able to absorb that much more risk. So, but that's something that, we would need to have discussions about and kind of give marching orders to whoever we designate to do a charter and to do a mission statement, I imagine, or create a vision. Anyway, did you want to say anything else about this?
Fine, I think that covers it.
I see one, I see two.
My name's Louisa Barcalo, and I'm with banking on central New Mexico. Diane, I wish you would speak a little bit about how you see moving the political process forward in the Albuquerque area.
Well, I've actually already had a conversation, one conversation with a gentleman named Lou Hoffman, who is some of you I'm sure probably know Lou. He's really a good guy. He is a director of the city department, and I know I'm gonna screw this up. It's finance and administrative services, I believe, in the city. So I think going forward, I think what maybe the big step would be to get a resolution passed that would do a study, that would fund a feasibility study, and that would probably require, in fact, we were just talking about this, submitting a request for bids, and see who's out there who would be interested in doing this feasibility study. And so I don't know, maybe I'm still naive. I didn't think that would be all that controversial, but sometimes I've been surprised. So I think, what I'd like to do first, really, is sort of take the temperature of maybe other counselors, maybe other people who work in key administrative positions, and see how doable that is. Or raise their temperature, right. Thank you.
Okay, where was the hand here? Okay.
Clifton Chadwick again with Keep It Kirky. This may be self-evident to most of us in the room, but
one of the things that strikes me is that our current economic paradigm tends to be extractive and exploitative and regard us all as fodder for the machine. So what you're talking about is the opportunity to tip that upside down. And so with that, one of the things that is currently going on in New Mexico in terms of economic development is the idea of chasing smokestacks. I'm sure you're all familiar with the efforts to bring somebody from somewhere else here who may like green and only find out that it's actually brown and leave again, leaving behind empty shells, etc. So one of the things that strikes me as really crucial about the opportunity to have a public bank is to look at that mission and use that money to fund smaller operations that may not be regarded in the kind of global efficiency that we have been told is in our best interests, but which doesn't appear to be working out that way. And I think of all kinds of rural connections throughout the state, ranchers that could process their meat at Martinez and Sons Meat Processing in Las Vegas and sell directly to Santa Fe and Albuquerque. So these are an answer to your question about where that connection would be, and those would be opportunities to provide jobs in many ways that would fit with our beleaguered educational status.
Hello, Roxanne Allen here. I loved your comments, and I just wanted to say that from what I've learned about public banking, one of the wonderful things about it is that we get to choose the areas, how the basic things that we want to address. And do we want to do student loans? Would that be the best thing? Would we rather do infrastructure to get fast internet throughout the state? I mean, we can choose these broad categories, and then within them find the smaller enterprises that we're going to be addressing or helping. But really, it gives us a chance for strategic planning in a way that we just don't have currently.
Okay.
My main question is, after this symposium, what those of us in Bernalillo County who want to get involved with this, what the next steps are. We've given you our names, our emails, but where do we go from here so that we don't do this 8 years from now? I think there's an urgency to having this started right now, and so I'd like to know from all of you, not just necessarily the panel, what we can expect from giving our names from this organization.
Well, excellent question, and I think part of the purpose of our symposium is to...
No, what next is on the program?
Oh, one, okay.
Okay, so should we skip, Carol, should we skip that till the what next?
No, I'm not trying to skip anything.
Brad?
Okay, I didn't get a clear signal here. Which is the hand that went up? Okay.
Could you explain to me again, I'm very new to this, but like when we have a $20 million bond, the 30 to 50% cost goes out of state? Is that what happens?
Right. So if we sell a bond for $20 million, 30 to 50% of that is very likely going to go towards the cost of financing. So not only is it the interest on the bonds, but it's, you have to, I went through this, and it's really a very complicated thing to do, but what an education I got. You know, you pay a company, a law firm, to put this package together, and then you pay somebody else to market the bonds. Well, that's what we did with the Winrock TID. But it's not easy, and it's not cheap at all. But, and that we probably still have to do, you know, the consulting and a bond broker. But the cost of the interest on that could stay here in Albuquerque, potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got a customer.
Thank you. You were saying that you were going to check the temperature, raise the temperature of other people in the local political. Has this never been discussed at the Albuquerque City Council? Does Mayor Barry care, have any interest? Has anybody made any statement other than you being here today?
Well, as I said, I had a conversation about this with one director, and actually a very short sort of hallway conversation with another city councilor who laughed and said, we can't do that. So, you know, here's the thing, and we talked about this earlier. There are not maybe as many people as we'd like to see in the room yet, but we're starting, you know. This is going to be an educational effort going forward, because it is kind of radical. You know, we all grew up with the brick and mortar banks, and now many of us do our banking online. And that was pretty radical, you know, and now we do it all the time now. So I think that we need to educate people, and I think that going forward, if we all talk about this a little bit more, you know, it'll become a less than radical thought, and a more of a concept that is not only doable, but it's advantageous to us. So does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think it's time now for the wrap-up of our symposium. The what next steps that we can come up with, led by Angela Merket and Vern Hagen. But while we're going through this, somebody in the audience asked me at the break if there were some books that we could recommend besides Alan Brown's The Public Bank Solution, which is on sale out there in the tiled area of the registration. And I thought of one by Greg Alperovitz, What Then Must We Do? And there's one by David Korten. David Korten, Korten, anyway, if you look him up on Amazon. And maybe some of the others of you can think of some ones that really deal specifically with public banking.